The quickest way to learn is to deal with other selves. This is a much greater catalyst than dealing with the self. Dealing with the self without other selves is akin to living without what you would call mirrors. Thus, the self cannot see the fruits of its beingness. Thus, each may aid each by reflection. End of quote. Hello, fellow seekers. Welcome back to the Law of One Spiritual Advice podcast. My name is Elle, and today I come to reflect with you upon social anxiety and what do other people think of me, and how do I deal with other selves? How do I be a good mirror for other selves? How can I detach from the outcome so I can attempt to be a good, pure giver of my being? And how can I also maybe find a little bit of comfort in my seeking and knowing what it is that I'm trying to share and not share and get across, and just some comforting thoughts that allow you to relax into your being is some things that I'm going to try to help you and discuss today. The idea for this podcast came up because I was having a discussion with a loved one, and they were asking me questions about basically interacting with family members and other people who they don't see a ton. And so it's sort of like stepping out of their usual home base into a new area of attempting to, be around these people for a few days and attempting to serve them and just be yourself and thinking, what is it I should do? What should I be doing here? How can I be a good person? So in my advice giving to this fellow loved one, I thought that there was a bunch of things that came up that I thought would be helpful to share with you. Just some things that help us to calm ourselves and sink into ourselves and not ask so many questions about, am I doing the right thing? And, it's not that your logical mind is erroneous when it goes down that path and that it's building anxiety because it's thinking about the future or the past or something like that. And it's not that is a bad thing. It's just that it needs to be kept in proper perspective, and it needs to be kept in proper balance with also living in the moment and reacting to your intuitive mind as opposed to just being run by your logical, rational mind, which will always be thinking and thinking and thinking and overthinking. And when we sort of can tap and balance then into the more intuitive side of things, we can operate with a sort of a freedom that isn't so anxious about what the self is doing with itself constantly. And my point in sharing that quote with you was to explain to you that, yes, the quickest way to learn is to deal with other selves. I know it kind of sucks because you were just thinking you could be a master of enlightenment all by yourself. However, in this world, in this life, it is very much a illusion of separation that we are living in, and therefore we see each other as separate from one another, and therefore it is in interacting with each other and being mirror for each other that we're able to see each other better. It is literally like you holding up a mirror in front of somebody else if you're trying to be honest with them, and they can hold up the mirror back to you as well. But it sort of depends on your perception of whether you are understanding sort of the metaphysical principles behind oneness, and where your responsibility lays in serving other selves or, serving the self as you see fit. So this isn't to say that you can't also just, seek solitarily within yourself and find things and be a good person, but you're going to get most of the strongest catalyst, the strongest areas of growth in your life, and they're going to be catalyzed by dealing with other selves. And I'm sure that you're aware of this. The more that you try to better yourself and the more that you sort of purify your intentions to be a good person, ironically, the more that you actually get frustrated and see the sort of impurity in other people's selves. And I know that can be very frustrating because you're thinking, well, if I can look at myself with a hard and honest eye, why can't these other people do the same? And you are technically right to a certain degree, but you still need to understand the areas of free will which dictate that you can only be a good example of how you want other people to serve other selves, and you can't necessarily dictate to them the best ways to be. Like, it's okay for you to share honestly with them, like I said. However, it's still going to come down to mostly how you operate and act within this density. What are your thoughts, feelings, and actions towards other selves? Which I'm going to read you a quote from session 100.9, how they explain that all we really need to do is attempt to see through the illusion, to see the creator in other selves, and be concerned with our own thoughts, feelings, and actions towards other selves. The more that we try to purify ourselves and our intentions, the more that will allow us to radiate more purely our being to other selves in hopes that it may serve them. So in session 100.9, they state, the positive polarity attempts to to see through the illusion to the creator in each mind-body-spirit complex, but for the greater part is concerned with the behaviors and thoughts directed towards other selves in order to be of service. This attitude in itself is full of the stuff of your third density illusion. End of quote. So I maybe haven't totally said it a lot, but if you've made it this far in some of my podcasts, I would assume that you understand that we are here in the third density to choose to either serve the self as the sort of primary creator, or to see the self and other selves all as the creator, and thus in serving the self you are able to serve others, and serving others is serving the self, and vice versa. And those are sort of the two ways to see this creation. So we're not going to go into that too much, but like it says here, the positive polarity in if you're going to be a positive seeker, right, kind of on the good path, you're trying to be the good guy, you're trying to be out here and be a good person to other people, then you should mostly just be concerned with your behaviors and thoughts and actions towards other selves, and basically just trying to have them in alignment with service, in alignment with pure intentions to serve. You're not necessarily having a bunch of ego distortions run your life and have them hijack or override your actions and thoughts and behaviors towards other selves, because that does happen. We are all human, and we all have that ego part of ourselves, and it will all happen here and there, and so it's okay. We're not completely perfect. That's fine. But it is in recognizing that it is the way that we are towards other people, that's where our sort of power is. And so I will read you a very common quote that I have read many of times, and this is from session 17.30. And this I share with you also just to help you find comfort in knowing that most other people are also wearing this sort of mask of confidence, and they may be just as anxious as you in attempting to deal with you, or in attempting to deal with other selves. You never really know someone's intentions, if they're even thinking about service or not. It's really you don't really have any idea, because we are behind a veil here in this third density, and we cannot telepathically understand perfectly what another person is thinking. So all we can really do is to attempt to sink into the moment, hone, focus, inspect, align your intentions, and radiate the being that you are, with no expectation of return, because in attempting to share the love of yourself and the love of the creator with other people, why would you need something in return, right? you're part of this oneness of the creator, and so you're just here to share things that you find helpful, not necessarily to force other people into your side of thinking. So session 17.30, the questioner asks Ra about what is the best way to serve other selves, and they answer, the best way of service to others is the constant attempt to seek to share the love of the creator as it is known to the inner self. This involves self-knowledge and the ability to open the self to the other self without hesitation. This involves, shall we say, radiating that which is the essence or the heart of the mind-body-spirit complex. Speaking to the intention of your question, the best way for each seeker in third density to be of service to others is unique to that mind-body-spirit complex. This means that the mind-body-spirit complex must then seek within itself the intelligence of its own discernment as to the way it may best serve other selves. This will be different for each. There is no best, there is no generalization, nothing is known. End of quote. So I always like to think of that one when I am attempting to go out into the world and be more interactive with other selves. I have that part of my rational mind which is constantly thinking about previous mistakes and thinking about the future and how I would like to operate in a sort of perfect way. And that's good and well. The mind serves us positively in that way. It's just that when we get too much stuck in that train of thought and we don't allow for just the free expression of our being to take place, that we kind of mess up the magic. And so I suppose the idea here is the art is to attempt to calm yourself to a degree that you are sort of freely expressing yourself, like it says here, radiating the essence of yourself without hesitation. That without hesitation is a part of the letting go of what other people are thinking and trying to, what you think that they're judging you by and what kind of person you are and this and that. And then let's just relate that into the vulnerability in expressing yourself, right? Because any time that you attempt to communicate, talk, serve another person, you really have no idea what that other person is thinking, whether they even want to talk to you at all. you have no idea, right? So, I mean, you do have a little bit idea. You have your logical mind and intuitive mind to sort of suss out the details of the situation. However, you really don't have a full idea of what the other person is thinking. So anytime that you are going out and attempting to serve, you will be putting yourself in a vulnerable position. What is that vulnerable position? The other self may reject your service. And so should you feel bad about that? Should you shun yourself? Should you hate on yourself for attempting to serve somebody and then them making you feel silly? Like, how dare you attempt to serve me? Who are you? Like, are you so high and mighty that you want to come and help me? And, that maybe you could reflect that if you're getting that type of thing from people, maybe you should adjust the way that you try to approach people with things, right? Maybe you could come with a bit of a softer approach, things like this. However, as you have reflected on yourself and used your rational mind to think these things through, you may still not find 100% clarity as to what it is you should be doing. But, say that you've scanned your intentions and you've determined that, yeah, even though given this sort of negative feedback from this other self, I still feel what I did was of a good attempt to serve, then I would just suggest that you leave it at that and you move on and you keep attempting to serve. I find that, just going to throw some random numbers out there, but maybe when I go out to serve 10 times in the day, maybe even a majority of my service may be rejected, even 6 or 7 rejections, but maybe that 1, 2, or 3 successes, as you may call them, in your service, and that things went maybe a little bit smoother than they did with the previous attempts. Those 3 times that you really did connect with an other self tend to outweigh the 6 sort of rejections that you have had, at least in my mind. Like, if I just have one experience with somebody, to serve one is to serve all, and therefore to count is without virtue. This is not really any point in counting the 9 rejections when there was, mostly it's just my intention to serve, which is of importance, and then the one success is success. But then, as I describe them in those terms, because I sort of have to just to even communicate, we still have to talk about detaching from the outcome, because failure and success, once again, are terms of separation in that they seem to think that to have an outcome one way or another is good or bad. And, you're sort of using your small self here, your small perception. You're not the creator. We don't have those far-reaching omniscience of the creator to know that maybe a mistake today leads to wonderful success tomorrow. And so, even some of those, like I said, those 6 negative reactions in your attempt to serve in the day, those may not even be negative. They might seem negative on the surface, but then maybe that question that you asked that other self, they come to think about it a month later, 2 months later, a year, 2 years later, and even though it seemed a negative moment at the time, it still evolved into something positive, and therefore it's sort of important that you do your best to attempt to serve in a pure manner and reflect honestly with yourself, but then still attempt to detach from the outcome, because it is in detaching from the outcome that you are able to more honestly and freely give of yourself, and to let that true beingness of your heart shine through to others, and they get that raw honesty that they can really, they honestly can feel it in your being when you're being honest with somebody. I've seen it before. They can feel it like mind to mind, heart to heart. And even though that you may not be expressing yourself 100% perfectly, they can usually feel the intention behind the care that you're trying to give the other person. And it's that intention that matters. It's that intention that equals love for that other person. And it is in being that love and attempting to communicate that love to the other selves that is more important than even the communication itself. So in session 54.25, they state, the positively oriented entity will be transmuting strong red ray energy into green ray energy transfers and radiation in blue and indigo, and will be similarly transmuting selfhood and place in society into energy transfer situations in which the entity may merge with and serve others, and then, finally, radiate unto others without expecting any transfer in return. End of quote. So you see, at first, it is, I suppose it is hard to explain this quote. I don't want to get too far into it, but basically they're stating here that to use the lower three chakras of your daily life, of the daily living, the bottom three chakras have a lot to do with the physical, which is like the surviving, the personal self, the self in society. So you're honestly going to be taking those types of energies and exchanging them with other selves, and that's good and well in that the exchange of energy behind it, even if it has an expectation of return, is still going to be working in a positive manner. But eventually what happens is that you then sort of transmute that energy into one which is more focused on merging, self with other self and serving other selves, and then radiating unto those others without expectation of anything in return, because, you're just here to give of yourself freely. And I would like to sort of wrap this podcast up with trying to describe what I sort of do when I am in social situations. And, it's funny because as I was younger, I used to be very good at being a very social person. And then as I get older and I spend more time, I suppose, in solitude, I tend to grow more wary of my anxiety in dealing with other selves. And as strange as that may be, that the older I get, it seems to come on more strong. I do think it's probably because I'm thinking more consciously about these things and attempting to serve. And so the more that I think about them, the more that I almost have to stay on guard to back off from overthinking about, trying to control the situation too much. And so like whenever I'm nervous and I'm trying to deal with other selves and trying to be a good person, I tend to default to how may I serve, right? When you're anxious and you're overwhelmed and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Like, just ask yourself, how may I serve? And then remember that this life, this life here that we are in is basically that. Since you have come to the conclusion that you would like to sort of be of service, then it is that question, how may I serve? And then all I do is I just look out for opportunities for service. If I see an opportunity for service, I will take it. Otherwise, I trust that thy will be done, and what needs to happen will happen. And my responsibility is just to be present in this moment and be wary of the opportunity to serve if I see it. And otherwise, just attempting to be in love and to be a good vibrational force, let's say. I don't want to be too much stuck in the past or the future, because if I'm too much thinking about the future, about, how my service is, what the outcome is going to be, I'm going to take away some of that magic of expressing myself honestly and authentically without too much pre-thought. And, if I'm stuck in the past, and then I'm going to be thinking about all the times that I've made mistakes, and I hope I don't make that mistake again, and la 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 la. So, basically bring yourself back into the moment. Ask yourself, how may I serve? When you are in that sort of overwhelming state, ask yourself, how may I serve? Put your focus back on the Creator when that small mind runs wild, right? It's fine. The mind serves you well in that it has alerted you to some possibilities of good things and bad things that may come of the situation. However, it needs to take a back seat. It needs to be balanced with that seeking that is in this moment, in the here and now, and so that we can sort of find a good balance of perception and operation and not be too much on the mind or too much on the intuitive side. It can also be, balanced on the other side too far, too much intuitiveness instead of any logical mind going on. So you have to figure out what your balance is there. But I'm going to read you a quote from session 32.1, and they refer to this as protection, but I would also just state this is sort of how to operate in a more helpful manner. So they state here, 32.1, this instrument thought upon the Creator in its solitude and in its actions with other selves, continually praised and gave thanksgiving to the Creator for each experience it was having. This in turn allowed the particular entity to radiate to other self such energies as became a catalyst for an opening and strengthening of the other self's ability to function in a more positively polarized state. Thus, we see protection being very simple. Give thanksgiving for each moment, see the self and the other self as the Creator, open the heart, always know the light light and praise it. This is all the protection that is necessary. End of quote. And so you may see that they're talking about here is protection, but like if you're in an anxious state, you're sort of fallen off the vibration and you need to come back into the open heart, right? And so that's kind of the same thing as what they're describing here. See the self and the other self as the creator. Open the heart, always know the light and praise it. This is all the protection that is necessary. This is essentially all you need to do in the moment. You don't need to overthink about, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? What are they thinking about me? What am I thinking about myself? Am I a good person? Are my intentions good? Do other people see me and think of me in a terrible way? Shush your mind up right now. Those are wonderful thoughts. They serve you for a moment, and then let that go and sink back into this moment, into the here and now that is ever before you. You never live in the future. You never live in the past. It is always just right here in front of you. And so what do you need to do? You need to ask yourself, how may I serve? And what is service? It is attempting to see from the other person's perspective and, attempting to do what you think is best for them. And you won't know what is best for them, and that's okay. And you sort of use your logical, intuitive mind to think about what that might be and offer it to that person. And if they take it, wonderful. And if they don't, wonderful. That's great. Either way, right? Give without expectation of return. You still, I'm not saying to never inspect your intentions and to never think about the things that you do and the feedback that comes from it. Do that. Please do that. It is an important part of the process. But when you are done with it, be done with it. If you get stuck in the mind, in the logical, rational mind of constantly trying to inspect things and pull them apart and put them back together and make sense of it here and make sense of it there and think, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, oh, I'll do this better next time, blah, 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 blah. It's fine in that you do that, but you don't need to overdo it. And so I am repeating myself. I know it's because the mind is trying to overthink this too much, and I really want to explain it to you and have you understand it, and therefore I'm losing the magic, my friends. And so I'm going to wrap this up and just hopefully share with you that some radiation of my being, and that I love you guys. Thank you for being a part of this sort of podcast thing and this law of one sharing and this dream of service that I have. I thank you all for listening. If you like today's podcast, please give it a like. I like to have a look at those here and there so I can see whether the topics I choose to pick about seem to be a good thing, or whether maybe I should think of some other things to think about. Leave me some comments. Make sure you subscribe to the page if you'd like to hear things in the future. And of course, if you find value in what I do, as I seek to freely give all of this, I rely on fellow other selves to freely reciprocate. So, you don't really get much anything from me other than my love and thanks and a prayer your way. If you send something my way, join my Patreon or shoot me a one-time PayPal. It's extremely appreciated. It gives me the time and resources to put more effort into these types of things, which I will quickly share with you. For example, it's Monday. I took a half day today off of work because I honestly wanted to find some good quotes and hopefully get a decent podcast out and edit it and hopefully get it all out ready for tomorrow morning. So as I, maybe lost a little bit of income today, that's all right. I wanted to offer good service. And so you see how sometimes I need a little bit of offset in that department, but it is extremely appreciated if you do and when you do. And even if you can't, no worries. All I care about is that, I'm able to serve in any manner. And so thank you guys for listening. Thank you for seeking, and thank you for being decent people that just like to think and use the heart. And I can't really ask for much more than that, right? So thank you for that. You guys have a wonderful rest of the week. Take care.